Oh, there's Carol.
We don't think you're really there if we can't see you.
Well, we're not here then. Nancy, you feeling all right?
No, C's for Carol.
These houses.
I wonder if this is her. There's Carol. Hey, Carol.
All right, everybody, just a heads up, you're live on Facebook and YouTube and all that good stuff now too, so. All right, Austin. Oh, he didn't change that. He didn't change his title.
Yeah, Mark.
All right, you see him? Let's see who else here. Oh, Karen must have had problems. Okay, she got off, then she got back on. I think she's back on now. All right, everybody, just give me just a minute. We're trying to get this for everybody else to see, maybe. Somebody else. Yeah, here we go. Here's some more people coming in.
Austin, so bye-bye.
Can you wait? All right. Okay. These messed up here. Oh, I see the delay. Sorry, guys. I'm trying to work some stuff out. So bear with me, and we'll spend just a minute.
Austin.
I'm black. My computer's like froze.
There you go.
Oh,
Well, we can watch while you're on there.
okay. Oh, yeah, just show Daddy. Daddy.
See how mistreated he is?
I'm sorry. I was moving you around so I could do stuff on here. You need Miss Nancy to come get you.
What did Daddy do to you? Oh my goodness.
Okay, that's not what I want.
I think you're gonna be okay.
Yeah, I think well, I've got to figure out this. Everybody just give me just 2 more seconds to check and make sure everything's shared where it's supposed to. And we will get started. Again, this is joy of technology. When it works, it's great. All right, we are on the church website, Facebook page. That's good. Yeah, give me 1 second. I got one more page I'm trying to get to load and see if it went to, and then we will get started with class. I apologize for the few minute delay here. Okay, all right, let me do one more thing. I think my computer's stalling. Here's somebody else.
I think your audio's fine. It's just the picture's freezing. So if that
This
helps
video,
you.
well, I think it's because I'm trying to share this video, and I don't have to get internet at church here.
Where did you?
What? I think if I don't get it this time, we're gonna go ahead and start class without it. I've got it everywhere but the church website. All right, I'm stalling out. I'm just gonna go back here. Oh, there's another one waiting to come in. All right, everybody, I think we're gonna go ahead and get started. I'll try to keep track of people as you come in. If anybody comes in, and like we said, you can use your chat to raise your hand if you need to. If you got a question or comment you'd like to make, you can use the chat button. Where we are going to talk about, if I can get this to share right, is we are going to talk in Genesis 42. Can everybody see that?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, good. Sorry, I got Paul in here with me. All right, we are in Genesis 42 tonight. We're going to do this class. This is about where we got to last time. You remember where we're where we're at in the book of Genesis is talking about Joseph. Joseph has been sold into slavery. Joseph has been in Egypt for 20 years at this point. He sold his brothers into slavery. Then he was bought and went into Potiphar's house. You remember what happens there with Potiphar's wife. Then you remember what happened with the jail when he was there and he got free. And you remember the dream of Pharaoh where he was put as second in command. You remember that he stored the grain for the 7 good years, waiting on the 7 bad years when there would be a famine throughout all that land. And you remember we talked about when we got there in chapter 41 and 40 about Pharaoh, about his brothers, coming into that, or coming to Egypt to get the food. Sorry, I'm in the wrong chapter here. We already talked once about Joseph and his father and his brothers coming to Egypt. You remember they came to Egypt to get the food. Joseph accused them of being spies, and he questioned them. I remember he questioned them heavily about who they were, why they were there. And as they got through questioning them, remember they told his son or about his brother. So they had another brother that was still at home with their father. And so Joseph told them if they ever want to come back again, they would bring Benjamin with them. And he made them leave. Do you remember when they left, they found the money sacks in their grain sacks. So they had wondered about how this would look to their father. One thing that I was reading about today that I found was interesting is one of the authors said you wonder what Jacob thought about this because here it is Jacob's sons going on 2 different trips. And as they're making 2 different trips, they have come back one brother short, or one less brother, but yet they've come back with more money. You remember when they sold Joseph, they sold him for a certain amount of money to the slavers. Then in this case, they went to supposedly go buy grain. And yet when they come back, what happens? They come back with money in their sacks that they didn't have. So you can see Jacob's, and I say that to say this, it leads into Jacob's hesitancy to send out or to send Benjamin with these brothers, knowing their past track record. And so that's where we're looking at this evening as we get here, because we're going to see that at the end of chapter 42, I want to bring this up real quick. Jacob the brothers before he'll send them back he wouldn't allow Benjamin to go with them. And we look at verse 37, you see on the screen there, it says, and Reuben said to his father, kill my 2 sons if I do not bring him back to you. Put him in my hands and I will bring him back to you. And what we see there is that they're begging Jacob to let him go back to Egypt to find more grain. And Reuben tries to make a deal with Jacob. But you look at verse 38, Jacob said, my son shall not go down with you, for his brother is dead, and is the only one left. If harm should happen to him on the journey that you are to make, you would bring down my gray hairs with sorrow to Sheol. And again, the word Sheol is the idea of grave. And so what's interesting is Reuben offers his 2 sons in the place of Benjamin. And he says, you can take my 2 sons and basically kill them. And that's the idea here, kill them or do what you want to do to put this responsibility, this burden upon me to do this. But the interesting thing about this, when we look at verse 38, is Reuben is the oldest son, yet Reuben is said to have Reuben's oldest son, but yet Jacob doesn't accept Reuben's offer. He tells Reuben, you're not going to go back with him. Okay, hold on 1 second here. We got more people coming in, I think. Give me 1 second. I don't see her on here.
Okay, she said she won't let her in. She's trying to get in. All right.
Oh, I don't know. Sorry, we're still trying to figure this out. We got people trying to get in, and it's not telling me they're here to get in. Let's go back to that Bible so we can just go there. So this is what's happening is that they have got this. Again, Jacob is so distraught, so tore up about what's going to happen, and so that leads us into the next verse here. Maybe. There we go. No. Well, no, I got 4, but I don't have backwards. I apologize. Let me restart my Bible program. I apologize. All right. So we get back to chapter 43. Let's try this again. We get to chapter 43 where I told you we were going to begin today. We're see that again in verse 1. Now the famine was severe in the land, and when they had eaten the grain that they had brought from Egypt, their father said to them, go again, buy us a little food. So what happens here is that Joseph said that this famine was going to be severe and that it was going to be a severe drought, severe famine in all the land and in all that was happening. And so he asked, or he's realizing where they're at, and he has to tell them, he tells the brothers to go back and buy us food. Now, some have asked why Jacob makes this response. Has he forgotten about Joseph's requirement? or what. But he goes back almost some, you can go back with no problem. And then we get to verse 3 that Judah sort of stands up to him. Now, remember this, that Judah is the fourth in line. Now, there's something interesting I want to say here about Judah. Is at this time we see Judah take another role, another step in this process, because Judah becomes the leader of Jacob's sons that are at home. If you'll remember back a few chapters ago, I think it's chapter 37, when they sold Jacob into slavery, it was actually Judah who said, let's sell him into slavery and not kill him. And so Judah was the leader there. Judah takes the leadership here. There are some places on passages where Judah is going to take the leadership. What this is, I think, Moses and God foreshadowing what's coming, foreshadowing what's going to happen when Jacob blesses his children, in that Judah is going to be the one who's told that the scepter will never leave your house, that Judah is going to be the one that God is going to bless to be the kingship. And that's what we're going to see when the Israelites become into their own kingdom. And so Judah steps up to his father, and some have said that perhaps Judah takes a leading role here in that he stands up and tells his father what his father needs to know. Because you'll notice he tells him, he reminds him of the words of Jacob or of Joseph in verse 3, where he says, the man solemnly warned us, you shall not see my face unless your brother is with you. And again, that idea of see my face is you will not have an audience with me. I will not entertain you. I will not listen. I will not sell you what you want. And so he says, if you will send our brother with us, we will go down and buy food. So here we have a second offering of someone to go buy food, of wanting to go, and of someone wanting to, of taking care of Benjamin, when they go down. And so you notice that's what he says, if you will send our brother with us, we'll go down by it. And again, verse 5, but if you will not send him, we will not go down. For the man has said to us, you shall not see my face unless your brother is with you. And so he emphasizes this in a short phrase to tell him twice the same statement, that you shall not see my face. And Benjamin, or Judah, basically tells Jacob that where they're at, the choice they have to make is Jacob either has to let Benjamin go on this trip to buy food, or he can refuse to let Benjamin go and basically kill them all. And that's what he's going to say in just a few minutes, is he tells Jacob that if you're not going to send Benjamin, there's no point in us going down there. There's no point in us even trying. And so Judah has this role where he is the son who stands up to his father. And so we get down to verse 6, where he says, Israel said, why did you treat me so badly as to tell the man that you had another brother? Then they replied, men, question us carefully about ourselves and our kindred, saying, is your father still alive? Do you have another brother? What we told him was an answer to these questions. Could we in any way know that he would say, bring your brother down? So Judah, or Jacob, uses this argument and says, well, why did you tell him you had another brother in the first place? And they say, well, we had no other option. He questioned us, and he asked us about all these different things, and he deduced that we had another brother. And they said, we never, basically in our language, he says, we never dreamed that he would ask to see Benjamin, that he would tell us to bring Benjamin down with him. And so they basically are Jacob's trying to figure out any way he can get out of this, but they won't let him. And then we get to verse 8, and this is why we read the verses in verse 42 before we got to 43. And Judah said to Israel, his father, send the boy with me, and we will arise and go, that we may live and not die, both we and you, and also our little ones. I will be a pledge of his safety. From my hand you shall require him. If I do not bring him back to you and set him before you, then let me bear the blame forever. If we had not delayed, we would have returned twice. So you see what Judah's response here is. His response is, well, put Benjamin in my hand. The same response that Judah had, the same response Reuben had, and Jacob tells Reuben, no way am I going to let you have it. But here Judah asked it, but notice the difference here. Down in verse 9, Judah says, I will be a pledge of his safety. Back in chapter 42, Reuben said, you can have my 2 sons. Judah here says that if you want to take someone's life, you want recompense for if anything happens to Judah or Benjamin, take it out on me. And this is a greater pledge. And I think this shows how concerned Judah was about this. And not only that, we look at verse 8 to see this leader Judah is becoming, because in verse 8, notice the end of that verse, Judah tells his father, you have to make this decision. You have to do something. Because if you don't, you're not just jeopardizing your livelihood, you're jeopardizing 3 generations of your family. Notice that right here, this both we and you, and also our little ones. So what Judah is saying is, one, both we talking about the brothers, that son generation of Jacob. You being Jacob and whatever wives are surviving at this time, we really don't know. And then also your little ones, your grandchildren. So he comes to Judah or Jacob and says, or Israel, and says, look, you've got a choice. You can either send Benjamin or you can kill the whole family. And again, if not a whole family, most of the family will die in this famine. And so he says, Jacob, you've got to decide. You've got to choose one or the other. And so this is a very interesting thought that Judah stands up to Jacob. And then knowing that, you look down at verse 10, Judah sort of makes a sideways slap at Jacob and tell him, say, if you had not delayed, if you would have sent Benjamin back before now, we could have now returned twice. So the idea is they had food to get by. They had the food to make the first round. They should have already went back at least once. And here Judah says we could have already made 2 more trips to Egypt and been back with food, and we would be in a good spot. But you're being, in our words, a hardhead and not listening and keeping this son above everyone else. And this is where Judah sort of lays it out to Jacob, is that here's what you're doing. You're choosing this one favorite son over your entire family. And he says, you've got to make a choice. You've got to let him go. You've got to let him out of this. And then we get to verse 11, where Jacob picks back up. And again, notice what Jacob says first in verse 11. Then their father Israel said to them, if it must be so, then do this. Take some of the choice fruits of the land in your bags and carry a present down to the man. A little balm and a little honey, gum, myrrh, pistachio nuts or nuts, and almonds. Take double the money with you. Carry back with you the money that was returned in the mouth of your sacks. Perhaps it was an oversight. Take also your brother and arise and go again to the man. Now, let's stop right there and see what Israel says. What Israel says, Jacob realizes his spot, but notice that he starts not with Benjamin. Benjamin is the easiest thing for Jacob could have seen on this trip, but it's the last thing he lists because it's the last thing he wants to see. But notice just some things he says to him. He says, this is what you're going to do. You're going to take some of the choice fruits of the land in your bags. Now, that makes us stop for a minute and say, no, wait a minute. They're in a famine. They're in a dry season. Why? How have they got food? Well, there are certain foods that either they had in an abundance of that they had saved up, or there were trees that were still growing and producing that they were able to have this. And so Jacob says there's certain things we have. Now, what's interesting about some of these things, it talks about balm and honey and gum. If you go back to Genesis 37, where Joseph is sold to the Ishmaelite traders, what they are taking down to Egypt to sell is balm, honey, and gum. So apparently these were goods that Canaan had that Israel didn't have. And so this was something Jacob knew that the man in Egypt would very much like. He would very much want. And then we get to verse 12. Another interesting thing is we see the change in Jacob's character, because here in verse 12, Jacob says, take double money with you. Now, Jacob is basically saying, take what's right. You know, it's the next verse. Carry back the money that was returned to you of your sack, and also pay for this extra grain you're going to buy. Now, this is very interesting, coming from the man that we saw earlier in this book as being the man who wanted to get whatever he could for himself. You know, we saw Jacob. What did he do? He stole his birthright from his brother Esau for a bowl of stew. He stole that birthright by tricking his father Isaac. We see a man in the early part of his life who's very scheming, very self-centered, very wants, what he desires, who is now saying, "Look, let's make sure we treat this guy right. Let's make sure we do what he needs and make this right with him." And I think this little statement shows us the maturity of Jacob. The maturity that Jacob has went from being self-centered to now being cared about his family and also making sure he does things right. And again, I think that's one of the commentaries I read this week or today said that perhaps he did this because he knew what happens when you take advantage of people, because he knew what had happened to him by Laban. Then he also knew how he was worried about his brother Esau when he came back and met him again. So he tells them to take the money back, take these gifts. Then on that, you know, verse 14, he says, also take your brother with you. Arise and go to the man. Take your brother and go. And then verse 14 is very interesting to us because in verse 14, Jacob gives the brothers a blessing, a prayer, because he says in verse 14, may God grant you mercy before the man, and may he send back your other brother, and Benjamin, and ask for me. And as for me, if I am bereaved of my children, I am bereaved. And what he basically says there is, may God grant you mercy. What's interesting about that, may God Almighty, that phrase that's used in all your most Bible translations of God Almighty, right here in verse 14, is actually, I think it's showing me here, is actually the Hebrew word El Shaddai. This is one of the names of God right here. This is a name of God in Hebrew, of El Shaddai. And so here Jacob uses the name El Shaddai to call on God. Now, this name for God has been used in other places as well as here to describe God as being the God of the covenant. And so he prays to God that God will, one, grant you mercy, and two, that he'll send back all of his sons. Now, what's interesting about this is that another thing I read this about preparing for this, and I thought about, is they said that the first time Jacob sends these sons, there's no word, no mention of him sending these sons with a prayer. He ever prayed for his sons that they'd have a safe trip there and a safe trip back. But here he asked for them to have a safe trip there and a safe trip back and to bring back the brothers to them. And then we get to the end of the verse. The end of the verse is a little strange to us, but I'll explain what that means in just a minute, where it says, as for me, if I'm bereaved of my children, I'm bereaved. What he basically says is that if it's for me to lose my children, then I have to lose my children. Jacob realizes that he's at a crossroads. Is either trust these brothers with Benjamin, who've not had a good track record of bringing all their people back and everything back they're supposed to, and wonder if they'll bring him back like they're supposed to, or he can keep them at home and he can lose everything. And so Jacob basically says he's resigning himself to do whatever is necessary, to do whatever has to be done to make sure that his family gets the best care they can. And so you notice verse 15, so the men took this present, and they took double the money with them, and Benjamin, they arose and went down to Egypt and stood before Joseph. So here we have them back in Egypt, verse 16. We see that Joseph begins to see them, and Joseph does something here again. This is another question somebody will ask. Well, why does Joseph behave like he does? Because Joseph is either one, he's punishing his brothers, or he's testing them, or he's checking them out. I think he's sort of testing his brothers, see how they are. I think that's one thing I read said that this is perhaps Joseph testing his brothers to see if they were treating Benjamin like they treated him, to see if they were really taking care of their father as they should have. And so this is what we sort of see. And so verse 16, Joseph sees the brothers coming, or he's told they're coming, and he tells the excuse me, steward of the house, the manager, to get ready. He tells, bring the men into the house and slaughter an animal. Get ready for the men to dine with me at noon. Now this is what's interesting. We're going to see this a little later come out again, is that Benjamin or Joseph here is going to do something that's out of character for an Egyptian. It's very out of character for Egyptians to have foreigners in their house with them. And again, this is something that certain groups eat certain animals, eat certain things, other groups didn't. The Egyptians were known in history for not eating with the Greeks, because the Greeks ate beef. To the Egyptians, the cow was a sacred animal. They didn't fellowship with the Canaanites, Jacob and his family, because they ate lambs. And Egyptian culture said a lamb was a precious, holy animal. And so the Egyptians were very peculiar of who they ate with. And we'll see that a little later. So this is very interesting, probably to the steward of the house, that the master invites these Hebrew men to come eat with them with no regard for why they are. And so it's very interesting how this works out. And you know, picking back up verse 17, the man did as Joseph told him and brought them into Joseph's house. And the men were afraid because they brought to Joseph, because they were brought to Joseph's house, and they said, it is because of the money which was replaced in our sacks the first time that we are brought in, so that he may assault us and fall upon us to make us servants and seize our donkeys. And so you see the brothers are worried because of what has happened to them. They're worried because they're brought into Joseph's house. Last time we're not told they're brought into Joseph's house. They're before Joseph in a formal setting, in a throne room. Now they're brought to his house, and the brothers are scared to death. They think he's going to bring us into his house so he can follow us, so he can kill us and destroy us and make us his servants and take our donkeys. And so you notice they start to speak up, verse 19. So they went up to the steward of Joseph's house and spoke with him at the door of the house and said, "Oh, my Lord, we came the first time to buy food, and when we came to the lodging place, we opened our sack, and there was each man's money in the mouth of his sack, our money in full weight. So we have brought it again with us, and we have brought other money down to buy with us to buy food. We do not know who put our money in our sacks." So you notice they realize the spot they're in, and so they say, "Look, we've got this problem. We were on the way home. We stopped. We realized we had extra money. We didn't need it. We had the money that we were supposed to give here. We brought back that money and more money. We're coming to make it right." And you notice he says that we've come to do this. This was not our. We didn't do it. Someone else did it to us. You can see the desperation in these words, and that these brothers are trying to say, we're not responsible for this. Don't hold us accountable for this. And then you know, verse 23, the steward of the house replies, "Peace to you. Do not be afraid. Your God and the God of your father has put treasure in your sacks for you. I received your money." Now, what's interesting is this idea is that the steward tells them, "Look, don't be afraid. Don't worry about it. Your God has blessed you." Now, this has got to be interesting to the Jews, to these Israelites, because these Israelites knew the Egyptians didn't follow the same God they did, didn't believe in the same God, believed in multitudes of God. But yet this one says, your God and the God of your fathers has blessed you, has looking after you, and he has put this treasure in your sack. And he says, "I received the money." The idea that I received your money, or I've taken, or I had your money, is that he says that, or he's saying they had the money, but they gave it back to them. That their God had blessed them with that money back. And then to really ease the scene out, you get the next part of that verse. I apologize, stop in the middle of that verse, where he says, "Then he brought Simeon out to them." So now you have all 11 brothers gathered together. And then verse 24, when the man had brought the men into Joseph's house and given them water, they had washed their feet, and when they had given their donkeys fodder, they prepared the present for Joseph's coming at noon, for they heard that they should eat bread there. So they are in this spot where they're worried to death about what's going to happen. And all of a sudden, Simeon's brought back, and they're at peace. And only Simeon brought back, notice what happens is they're brought in not as spies, not as people who ought to be afraid or ought to be worried, but they're brought in as guests. You notice they give them water. They bring them into the house. They wash their feet. They feed their donkeys. That was a huge thing, to take someone's animals and give them food and give them shelter. They were giving them out of their own goodness. And so their brothers are probably still wondering, what have they done to merit all this? And not only that, now they're told that their brothers are that Joseph's coming at noon and they're going to have to eat with him. And so they're worried about what's going to happen. And so we pick back up in verse 26 when it says that Joseph came home, and they brought into the house to him the present that they had with them, and bowed down to him to the ground. So they bow down to before Joseph. Sorry, bear with me 1 second again. I just lost my Bible. They bow down before Joseph. And what's interesting here, they bow down. This is a fulfillment of Joseph's dreams. Remember those dreams that got him into trouble so long ago that they said would never happen? Verse 26 here is a fulfillment of that dream. You remember the one dream was that the sheaves bowed down before his sheep. Now Joseph sees that come to fruition. And you have to wonder how that must have felt to Joseph to see that. And I'm sure he remembered those dreams and remembered that prophecy of God. And then this verse 27, when Joseph comes in, the first thing Joseph does is he asks them about their welfare, asks them how they're doing, asks them how the food is, how the land is. And then this next part, it said, is your father well, the old man of whom you spoke? Is he still alive? And they said, your servant, our father, is well, he is still alive. And they bowed their head and prostrated themselves. Again, they bowed down before Joseph, just as that dream prophesied. And again, he checks with them. He inquires of them about their father to see if he's still alive, to see how he's doing. Again, it's very strange for a foreign governor to be asking about these men, their family, but yet we know what Joseph is doing. Hold on 1 second here. I don't know if I've lost everything because I'm not seeing my Zoom class. Oh, you got your phone on still. Sorry, people, bear with me 1 second. I wonder if they. Sorry, I apologize. I don't know if it's my computer's going slow or what has happened.
You're frozen.
I'm frozen.
From Sarah Davis, I can still see you, but we can see you, but you're not saying anything.
Okay. I apologize. I have.
Well, I can hear you.
They can see me.
Yeah, I can see you. And I can hear everything you're saying, so just talk.
Okay, you can. Okay, I'm having a little issue here with.
Okay, Sarah says she can hear. So just
Okay,
talk.
y'all can hear. I apologize. You can hear me talk. We're about to the point where we're going to have to end anyway. I was hoping we could get done with this. But yeah, we can. We're going to finish this chapter. Sorry. And I hope you can hear. If not, we'll work for next week. Again, after he asked them about their brother, notice verse 29. I apologize if you can't see the Bible anymore. And it says that he lifted up his eyes and saw his brother Benjamin, his mother's sons, and said, is this your youngest brother of whom you spoke to me? God be gracious to you, my son. Then Joseph hurried out, for compassion grew warm for his brother, and he sought a place to weep, and he entered his chamber and wept there. Then he washed his face and came out, and controlling himself, he said, serve the food. Now, What's interesting about this encounter is Joseph has been talking to his brothers, but apparently they've been prostrate, laid down before him. And again, they've got their garb on. You really can't tell who's who. And finally, you notice it's the idea that Joseph's looking down, they're looking down, they're not doing this as they ought to. And all of a sudden, Joseph looks at the brothers and he sees Benjamin. He sees his beloved brother. Again, that beloved brother who is he was the son of his mother, his father's, again, one of his father's favorites. And Joseph asks, is this your brother? Again, notice he doesn't even give him time to respond. He says, is this your brother of whom you spoke? And then he blesses Benjamin, where he says, God be gracious to you, my son. And again, the idea there of my son is not Joseph trying to say he's his father, but the term of endearment, the term of a recognition from someone in authority to someone beneath their authority, to a lower up, where he says, God be gracious to you, my son. And then you notice as soon as this happens, Joseph is so overcome with grief that he has to run out of the building. He runs out of the place where they're at, and he finds an inner chamber in his house, and he just cries. He felt compassion for his brother. He was overwhelmed. He wept. He goes to his personal room, and he weeps, and he cries out there. And then he knows verse 31, he washes his face. He tries to get himself under control. And even then, you know, verse 31, and controlling himself, he's still fighting back the tears to acknowledge who these are. Because here it is, after 20 years, excuse me, he has finally seen his brother Benjamin. And remember, Benjamin was not involved in the slave. Benjamin was not involved in selling his brother. Benjamin, but from all accounts, maybe has no clue about what has happened to Joseph. And so Joseph is overcome, and he comes back just enough to say, serve the food. And then, you know, it's verse 32. We see this idea of the Greeks and the Jews and the Hebrews, the Jews, the Israelites, and the Egyptians eating. Okay, notice verse 32. They served him by himself. Talking about Joseph. Joseph ate by himself at one table. Then by themselves, somebody's brothers. They served the Hebrews on one side of the room. And then notice the other, and the Egyptians who ate with him by themselves. So basically you have three tables here. This is not uncommon in the ancient world. Is you set by your social ranking. The higher ups, the officials, was set with Joseph. There were no officials apparently here, so it's Joseph and his servants and his brothers. So one table are the brothers, and another table are his servants. And are the Egyptians who are there don't have rank. And so they begin to eat, and the last part of that, the Egyptians ate by themselves because the Egyptians could not eat with the Hebrews. For that is an abomination. That was a desecration. That was a huge no-no in the Egyptian religion to eat with a foreigner. But again, because of that idea of food, the Hebrews liked to eat lamb. Well, lamb was sacred to the Egyptians. They didn't want to be connected with them. It's sort of very interesting that the Egyptians are very similar to the Jews, and they were very peculiar about who they ate with and who they interacted with. And so they sit down to eat. Joseph has his big table. The brothers are theirs, and then the Egyptians they had another table. And he knows verse 33, verse 33 and 34. Joseph perplexes the brothers and the Egyptians because you notice, and they sat before him, the firstborn according to his birthright, and the youngest according to his youth. And the men looked to one another in amazement. What this is they sat before him is not that they just chose their seats at the table, but they were seated. And the way we were seated was that Reuben was first, then Simeon, Levi, Judah, and so forth and so on, all the way down to Benjamin. And the brothers are confused about this. How does this foreigner know who the oldest to the youngest is? How does he know so much about us? And then not only that, we also see the other side. The Egyptians will look over and they would hear these talking about this, and they would wonder, how in the world did he know this? How has he understood it? And then notice verse 34, portions were taken to them from Joseph's table. Here's another place of honor, of respect, in that Joseph himself provided the food. for the Egyptian or for the brothers. It came from his table. Typically, what you would have in the ancient world in this feasting situation is the master of the house would have one table that was set with the best food of all. His visitors would have a little bit of better food than common, but the servants would have the worst. And depending on how he viewed the visitors was how well they fed them. But to be fed from the master's table was a major honor, a major appreciation, a major way of showing that you care for someone. And then you notice an honor, I guess would be the best way of saying this. Then you notice that, you notice the end of verse 34, but Benjamin's portion was 5 times as much as theirs. And they drank and were merry with him. Benjamin gets his plate and he served, not he serves himself, he's brought a plate and his plate is piled high. His plate is piled 5 times greater than all the others. And you got to imagine to being with these brothers. And again, this is not Joseph even revealing himself yet. That's still a few chapters later. And you got to wonder how these brothers must have known that Joseph arranged them by chronological, arranged them from oldest to youngest. And yet he gave the youngest the food. Again, in their society, typically the oldest child would be the one that gets the food. And this has to perplex the brothers. And again, it's very interesting, that last verse, because of all that happens here and all that Joseph's done, you think they would be weary. You think they would be trying to figure out what's going on. But you notice that last verse, they drank and were merry with him. And the idea here is that idea that they are in, that they were merry with him, is that they got drunk. Again, there's no idea, no statement that what they did was right, what they did was wrong, no commendation or condemnation, but just stating the facts. They drank and they were merry. They drank and they ate Joseph's food. They drank from his wine, and everybody was happy, and they enjoyed themselves. And so that's sort of where we leave this chapter. I know we're a little later than what we wanted to. I apologize for the delay at the front. I hope you enjoyed this study of Genesis 43. Again, it's very interesting to see how Joseph treats his brothers. These men who have done so much wrong to him, he very well could have turned his back on them. He very well could have said no food. He could have executed. He could have done all kinds of things to them. But yet he takes them into his house. He receives them with him, and he sits down and eats with them, and he has a good time with them. And again, you got to imagine how that night must have been for Joseph. As I was thinking about that today, as I was getting this ready, I was thinking about how that must have affected Joseph to sit down and eat and have a meal with his family, but yet not tell them who he is, but yet not reveal that I'm your brother. I am the one that you have set aside. I'm the one that you cast away. I'm any of those things. It's always a very interesting story to me about what Joseph does here. I appreciate everyone's time tonight to come out. I hope this has worked well for everyone. I hope you've enjoyed this. Like I say, next Wednesday night, we'll pick back up in chapter 44, where we'll see the continuation of the story of Joseph. Again, I hope everyone's having a good time at home and staying safe. We look forward to seeing you all Sunday morning at 10 o'clock. If you want to, since we're done with our Bible class, if you'd like to talk or communicate with anybody, you can unmute yourselves and talk now. We'll give you a few minutes. If not, nobody unmutes a little bit, talks, we'll cut off, and we'll sign off for the night. If you're ready to sign off and don't want to talk, you can do that. I don't know if the adults want to do it. The kids, when we do this, they love the few minutes to talk before and a few minutes to talk after. So I was going to give you all a few minutes. If anybody want to talk to each other, if not, you're fine to leave, and we'll talk to you on Sunday.
But you did a good job, Matthew.
I enjoyed
Appreciate it,
it.
Brother Mark.
There they are.
You see Sarah waving at you?
Where's Sarah? Look. There's Sarah. Say hey, Sarah. There's Miss Irene. Say hey, Miss Irene.
Hey. I've got some fingers to chew on too.
They're not as yummy as his.
Probably not.
Hey, Joe.
Look, there's Mr. Joe.
Oh, he's-
Say, hey, Joe. Oh, hey, Joe.
Oh,
Tell them who the first man was, Austin.
hey, Austin, who is the first man and woman?
Hey, who is the first man and woman? Who's the woman in the Bible?
Fuck.
Not Hulk. Who's the first woman?
Yeah.
Nancy.
And what was the first man's name?
Who's the first man?
I love you.
Mark.
Mark.
I don't know how old you are now, don't we?
Oh, look, there's Pop. Where Bubba go? There's Bubba. Hey, Bubba. Pops? Where Pops go? I don't know. There's the fireplace. Oh, Bubba got off. Yeah.
Matthew disappeared.
Vanished quick.
Nancy. Yeah, there's Nancy.
Hey, sweet boys. Hey, sweet boys.
Come here. Come here. Hurry. I think someone to the left. See Miss Sarah to the left.
Your video's moving a lot better now, Matt.
Go to Daddy's room. Or go to Daddy's.
Good. I don't know what happened to it.
Well, your mouth and the words were not together.
I apologize. I may have to do this from the church where I got that better internet.
I think your audio worked fine pretty much the whole time.
Okay. You gonna show 'em? Like I said, it's just a learning process.
Definitely.
We've all learned a lot about this stuff.
Do this.
I can do that too.
Somebody clean the table.
Not for long now, Kate.
There, Mark in. Oh, come on, everybody, join in.
Yeah.
Oh, I don't want to get that close. Mark.
All right, that's it. All right. All right. Can you tell them bye? We're going to cut off. Appreciate all y'all.
Bye,
Take care. We'll see you next.
Bye, sweetie.
Y'all have a good night.
You too.
Thank you.
Bye.